and welcome to Ask the Manager. We have our newest select person here, Theresa Flynn, and we're excited to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Teresa's had a little time to settle in before I asked her to come on the show, but I think it's a good time for us to get to know her better. So she's going to be asking the town manager some questions, and we should just get started because I know I have lots myself. So
Excellent.
I'll let you start with the first question.
Oh, well, thank you. So I love putting Kevin on the hot seat. This is a great opportunity, so thank you. I know that Donna usually approached this with more current events and things that are going on in town, but I figured since it's the end of the year, it might be nice to hear just in terms of what you think the accomplishments were for this past year and maybe what you're most looking forward to in 2022.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll split the accomplishments and what we're looking forward to in 22. I think starting off with the same answer, we've done a lot of work in the current calendar year to get towards the formal public engaged strategic planning process. And that's been a huge work. That's something that I started talking with board members in June of 2017 before I even started. We had met on some weekends. So I'm really happy that that's actually coming to fruition. We've had some one-on-one meetings with the consultant, the board members have. We have a full day tomorrow with 3 different groups of stakeholders, town employees, board and committee chair members. And then we'll move into the early part of the new calendar year with a meeting with the Board of Selectmen before we actually go out to the public. So I'm just really proud of that. I think it's the right thing to do for the organization, like whenever I think about the town government, but then also for the residents, because as you know, that main goal is really to understand what the public wants from their local government and then allow us to respond as best as we can to help them. A lot of other accomplishments throughout the year. We continue to wage trying conditions with the pandemic, but we've really found a way to adapt and just, be safe, but keep moving forward. And, that's included almost nearly full remote work staff to everyone being in person as it is today, which is, kind of this layer of work that we've had to do over the past 24 months that, is often in the background but ever present, so we see that. Really proud of, continued accomplishments in the Department of Public Works. One of the biggest things I mentioned last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting is the completion of the first full round of unidirectional flushing. There wasn't a day that really went by in, 2019 or 2018 that we weren't receiving a dirty water complaint, and now we're, knock on wood, we're not receiving those. Maybe 1 or 2 trouble spots still in the town, but we've spent a lot of time, effort, and resources in not only building that new water treatment plant to remove the manganese source, but then taking the next right step with unidirectional flushing. And then we can't forget about the override. Like, that is a kind of a paradigm shift in financial management for the town. It's given us more resources. Those resources in turn have made us do a lot of hiring and introducing new staff into the organization and rethinking how we operate. Truly grateful for that, because at the outset of the budget process, it just looks night and day to previous years. We're not concerned with conversations, not because we have unlimited resources, because everything's just much more known. It's like we already know what the number really is for the school department and the municipal side, and now we just have to work towards our budget process to see if we need it all, or what further challenges that we'll have. But it's just night and day. So we're really proud of that work, and that's a full spectrum of folks that have contributed to the financial model, the campaign, the work at town meeting, and all those things. So those are probably my biggest 3 that I've seen over the course of the last year, and really looking forward to engaging with the public over the next 12 months, really 6 months to build out that strategic plan and just continue to evolve things.
So Theresa, what's your vision for the next year?
So I'm with Kevin. I'm really excited about getting more community feedback and just better learning how we can communicate and engage with people on an ongoing basis. I think that a lot of what the town has done has been grounded in a plan and a process, but people are not necessarily aware of that plan and the process. And when it comes time to sort of understand decisions, they don't necessarily feel that they were included in the decision. They don't understand how the decision was determined. So I think that getting that feedback and better learning how the community wants to be engaged and making our priorities their priorities.
So being a selectman, is it what you expected?
Yeah, yes, very much so. It's been fun. It really has. It's been interesting. It's just such a broad spectrum of topics and decisions that we're involved in, and obviously some are very tactical, and some are really exciting. So it's so far I have not been unpleasantly surprised by the role.
So do you have any frustrations
Ooh.
related to being a selectman, I should say?
No, I think that and I do want to talk about sort of the Beal reuse. I think that because that is so it's very top of mind and what we're working on right now. That again it gets to that process of there was a reason that we landed on decisions around mixed use and the town center rezoning and development, and there's just so many people in town, and I'm not criticizing, they have no idea. And as much as I'm trying to use my voice to communicate, it's challenging. And I think we all know social media is a double-edged sword. It's helpful, I think, in terms of pushing content out. I don't think it's an effective use of engaging the community and getting feedback. So I think we have to better think through how we can use it as a tool, but also ensure that the community knows that they can pick up the phone and call us or ask for a meeting or write to us, but a thread in a Facebook chat is not necessarily going to really get to the decision makers.
So did you have any surprises as it came to the time it takes to get things done compared to, say, business?
Oh, sure. Yes, it's slow, for sure.
It's slow.
It's slow, but I think that, the way we're obviously structured and having a board of selectmen, we meet on average every other week. Everything is open meeting, and it's a very part-time position. So it's, again, I think we're trying to carve out as much time as we can to advance as many initiatives. But, I can see from on the outside looking in, it's slow. And I think the plus side of that is that everyone that I interact with, from Kevin to my colleagues on the board, wants to make the process more efficient and to enable us to make decisions more timely. So it's a work in progress.
Okay, so we probably should, before we get to Beal, we should probably talk a little bit about COVID. And the numbers are skyrocketing in town.
They are.
What were we at, 156 last week?
Yeah, 156 cases. So we've moved into a daily average of more than 39 cases a day, and a positivity rate. And again, that's how many people are positive who are tested. We're now at 5% over the last 2 weeks. And that 5% threshold is like substantial community spread, and we're really seeing that in the numbers. We were kind of plateaued at this fall uptick, and now we've built off of that, which that's something that we hadn't seen before. It would always go back down to zero, and then the curve would go up again. So yeah, definitely a substantial community spread. 40 more cases today on the 15th, and we're trying to work with public health to get more opportunities for people to get boosters, and the younger folks vaccinated that still may not have had the opportunity to do that, and encouraging mask wearing and things like that. So,
And the reason for the masks
yeah,
today?
I mean, there's a lot of virus in the community right now, and we're actually talked with the Board of Selectmen informally last night outside the meeting. But effective Monday, we're going to go back to an AB group in Town Hall. It'll still be open to the public as it has been, but we've had a lot of employee COVID positives over the last 7 days, and we have a lot of departments that are 3 and 4 individuals, and when everyone's in a relatively small space, that could mean like the whole office is, quarantined or waiting test results, and we can't function. So we're just really trying to preserve our operations and not have a situation where everyone's out. So half the employees will be remote, week A, and then half will be in person, and then they'll just flip-flop, and that's what we did most of last year, so.
And you get most of your guidance from the Board of Health, or?
Yeah, I mean, most of our professional guidance comes in on a day-to-day basis through the Worcester Department of Public Health, through our Regional Health Alliance, and, we work with the Board of Health in Shrewsbury on policy and guidance from there. But we have a great team that we work with at the City of Worcester. They're, a phone call away, and, we get advice from Dr. Hirsch and Karen Clark and, their team of experts over there for that day-to-day, like what's going on, how's this going to impact operations, things like that.
Now, I don't know, years ago, the Board of Health just functioned with someone who didn't even have a medical background. They did a good job, but they didn't even have a medical background, but yet they ran our Board of Health. We couldn't function with that in today's world with COVID-19, et cetera.
Right.
So we actually, not because we had good foresight, but it was good that we're in the position we're in, where we have the guidance from Dr. Hirsch and so forth in the system that we're in, which is far superior to what we had before as it relates to.
We have our own staff epidemiologist at the City of Worcester, Nikki Nixon, and she can rely upon her network of support of state epidemiologists. So we really are in a position that we couldn't have even staffed up to if we wanted to when the pandemic came.
Now, 74% of our population is fully vaccinated, and 85% has at least one dose.
Yes.
Those are good numbers. So we have fully vaccinated people, but yet we still have an incredible amount of positive cases in town. And what we're hearing is that those that are testing positive aren't necessarily as ill as they would have been had they not been vaccinated.
That's right.
So it's kind of like the flu shot. You may get the flu, but you may not get as severe a case as you would have had you not gotten your flu shot.
Right.
So I don't know how you convince people to get vaccinated, but
the other part of that perfect storm does seem that now we're seeing the timeline that the original doses are good for, right? 6 months, and then you dip below 50 or 60% effectiveness in preventing the disease, and then so that's why the booster is in play now. It just seems like a really bad perfect storm.
I sensed that we would have a booster, and I now sense that not only will we have a booster, it's probably going to work out to be ultimately a vaccine we get at least annually, because of what they're learning. Because some of the mistrust comes from, I think the expectation was that people expected the doctors and hospitals to be able to just handle it and not, realize that this is a learning curve, and they've been very successful in a very short period of time, but yet, things are going to still change. And unfortunately, that developed some mistrust, and I think, there's too many experts on TV that aren't really experts, and so on and so on. I could go on for hours about what I think happened, but it will change, because every day medicine is learning more and more about COVID and how to deal with it and how to keep people as healthy as possible. So I'm excited about the fact that they have now an antiviral type pill,
Mhm.
and that's moving forward, and that will change.
Mhm.
But they'll get better at it, but I don't believe it's gonna go away. I just think we're gonna handle it better, you know, and then from there, you know, the world has to catch up too.
Right.
So I could be on my soapbox for that for hours, but we should move forward with another question.
I guess it's over to me. So you're not expecting any disruption to town hall services or other town services as a result of the shift in?
No, not at this
Being in
time. I
office.
think, you know, our most publicly serviced areas like the library and senior center, if we start to run into staffing implications there, you would see it the most. Also with the library, and there's no near-term changes on the horizon as far as what patrons can do, but if we may have to roll that back a little bit. Those would be the near-term things. And again, you know, the other part of this is it's going into winter and everyone's kind of inside, so that's a challenge for us. But no, we won't close to the public. We'll stay open at least until something, you know, much more concerning would happen. But service levels will remain as they are. And you know, our field staff, highway, you know, water, sewer, public safety, you know, anyone that's not really bound in the office will, you know, they'll still be on their normal full rotations, things like that.
So I know from where I work in the private sector, you know, you're hearing a lot about the labor shortage, difficulty in hiring. What are you seeing in terms of your staffing levels and ability to recruit candidates? Are you
Definitely a
feeling
lot of
any pain?
challenges. You know, I think we've seen it most frequently and regularly in our highway positions with like our heavy equipment operator positions. You know, we literally are struggling to get people to respond to an interview request even after they've applied. And then I'm really seeing some, I think it's a kind of a no-brainer, but some really aggressive retention offers after we offer someone like, you know, oh, my employer offered me $250 more an hour. And I'm like, wow, you know, we are at our maximum. So, you know, I think everyone realizes that, and it's kind of, you know, making it even more difficult, good for the current employer. But yeah, I mean, candidate pools are down and kind of landing the deal. It was almost a given in the past, like we'd get someone through an interview process and make an offer and then we'd just keep rolling, you know, and now it's like, well, are they gonna accept? So we're definitely seeing it, yeah.
And I know we're seeing it on the school side too. Dr.
Yeah.
Sawyer sent out an email and I told my kids I was going to volunteer and be a substitute teacher at the high school. It was not very well received. But
Yeah, that wouldn't be fun.
So I know, you know, lastly, just talking about looking forward, last night we finalized the financial objectives for 2023. You touched upon the override, how
Yep.
we're sort of in a much more positive position, not just in terms of, you know, the known funding, but, you know, just the uncertainty and not being in a position where we have to think about what we would have to cut going forward. But anything you want to mention regarding those financial objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what we're learning is that the model that we put in place worked in the spring, and it will provide some, you know, great stability, but there will be a cycle to it. You know, I'm not trying to be doomsday. It's mostly positive, but like it will end, right? Because we don't have the opportunity just to raise a little bit of money every year. We have to ask for that bigger override and then put it into the stabilization fund and spend it over time. But, you know, preliminary look is that, you know, it'll be more than that 4-year commitment that was, you know, originally put out there, and we're refining those numbers as we go through the budget process. Everything else in the budget process is really similar to as it has been in the past. Departments are developing their budgets. This year we're also introducing, you know, tying those things to tying their budget requests to their goals, which will again be further integrated in with the strategic plan. So it's again, it's not like we have unlimited resources, but it's just like a breath of fresh air because it's just much calmer. I'm not, you know, I don't have anxiety about what Dr. Sawyer is gonna, you know, tell me his number is and what his needs are, because, you know, he's been building and working towards that, you know, through last year's budget cycle, and it'll roll into this. So those knowns are really important. And I think it's an adjustment for everyone, and it may seem in instances like there's less conversation about the budget as we move forward to it. But I really think it should just be different, because there's not going to be that anxiety, but what is it that we're doing? How are we strategically using the funds? Those conversations will be different in the future. So I am really happy that, local receipts is our third largest revenue category for the operating budget, and we've seen a really great rebound in economic activity that drives those. So meals tax and other discretionary spending that come in through building permits and other departmental receipts, and even motor vehicle excise tax, to date has been very strong, really truly like a V-shaped recovery, where the only blip in the radar really seems to have been fiscal year 20, whenever the economy was shut down for that final quarter of our fiscal year. So more positive, than negative, but we'll still have to live within our means and work towards that budget number. On the school side, that's a 4.25% year-over-year increase, and on the town side, it's a 3.5% for our operating budget. Debt service is what it is, and then we have like health insurance and stuff like that. That's actually set at 6.5%, just because those market trends really require us to put more resources there. So, but I would expect by the springtime we'll be coming back to the Board of Selectmen with, saying like, okay, let's confirm that fifth year, so to speak, and think about that as we plan through the summer with the strategic plan and the goals and where we're headed into the future.
Speaking of health insurance and benefits, as you put on additional employees, you have to also take into consideration all of the benefits that go with that. And you have this chunk of money that you've set aside, but that has to be able to withstand over time that increase. And do you have any concerns about that?
General concerns of just making sure that we live within our means every year. And we certainly will do that. We've made changes in health insurance. We have high deductible health insurance plans now, which are a lower cost to both the employee and the employer. Now there's a deductible, a higher deductible, but we also contribute to our employees' health savings accounts, which is a long-term benefit to them. The town contributes, half of the deductible amount in the employee. And even with that, the town saves money on every plan when someone chooses that. And then further, kind of as the continued evolution of health insurance, as of July 1, if you're hired July 1, 2021 or after, high deductible plans are your only option. So we continue to find ways to manage those costs as best that we can. The pension system's fully funded, and that's not an extraneous or overburden on the budget any longer. And that will just take care and feeding over the years and not millions and millions of dollars. So those behind the scenes, more technical financial moves that we continue to think about and make, health insurance and otherwise, kind of mute those concerns a little bit versus just, doing what we've always done.
What have town employees done with the changes with Fallon Insurance?
So we are working through that right now. So anyone that has Fallon will have to make a change for July 1st, 2022. And over the last 4 or 5 months, we've worked through the West Suburban Health Group, which is a joint purchasing group, which just simply means 11 municipalities get together and we self-insure ourselves for health insurance. And we've restructured that, and basically Blue Cross Blue Shield will be the most comparable offering that will replace Fallon. Employees will still have the opportunity to go to Tufts or Harvard Pilgrim health plans, but we mirrored the rates from Fallon over to their Network Blue, Blue Cross Blue Shield's Network Blue plan, and we've actually set rates already for next year, and it will only have a minor impact on town finances and employee finances with those changes. We actually got the Insurance Advisory Committee and the unions to agree to the contribution strategy change that will benefit everyone.
I thought when COVID hit, other than people that were getting sick with COVID, there weren't as many demands on health care, so that insurance companies were saving money compared to other years. That didn't reflect back to the employee.
Not completely, no. We still continue to see at the West Suburban Health Group, which is a rather large group. We spend about $120 million on employee health insurance premium or claim costs over the course of a year. We still see we've set rates that we, went a little bit high on because we are anticipating this. The insurance companies, have built in this, Theresa may know this better than I do, this big COVID trend, right? They say, well, eventually all these people are going to come back to the doctors and it's going to cost 10% more next year. We haven't seen that yet. I hope it never comes to fruition, but that kind of is what pushed and offset that, or required still additional funding from employees.
Yeah, I would think that the argument is that costs going into next year are not as high as they otherwise would have been, because we recognize that there was some favorability in the past. And as Kevin said, when you're self-insured, the good news is that we weren't paying a fixed premium rate to the insurance companies. We were able to, only pay claims as they came in. But the future is very uncertain, so you have to be responsible and put in factors to account for the fact that claims will be higher next year just because utilization was lower over the past year or two. People did defer care, and some statistics will show you that we are starting to see higher claims, more severe, large claims, because people deferred, needed care during COVID. So from what I've seen in terms of the rate setting and the decisions that made, they're very responsible. They're still very favorable to employees, and it's a good value.
So what else do you have? You want to move on to Beal?
I don't know. I want to avoid Beal. I was going to talk about DEI because I don't know which one's better or worse. I don't know.
Why don't we go to Beal next?
Okay. We'll go to Beal.
Sure.
Okay, so there was a public hearing on the 17th, which was for an extended period of time and held at the middle school for space reasons and being able to space people out at the same time. There were a lot of concerns, and like Theresa alluded to earlier, some of it was surprising that people weren't aware of things that you just assume that they know, but people don't always watch these wonderful meetings, so that they're not fully aware of that. But one thing that came through loud and clear to me, of course I'm partial to it, was that they're concerned about the open space being gone and replacing the small ball field that's there. Are there plans for that?
There are plans to retain some open space. We don't envision a ball field on that site. I don't think there's enough property to have that large of an open space, but we are trying to consider the comments that came in through the public hearing, work with Civico Greenlee to see, will they work with us in being responsive to the plan, which, would include hopefully more open space than was even presented. But yeah, so definitely green space and open space, but not like an active playing field. We know those are needed, and
is there room at the foundation property for an additional softball field beyond where the soccer fields already exist?
I don't believe so as it sits today, without overlapping or compromising or whatever some of the soccer fields. So,
what about SAC?
Well, I think
well, I say SAC,
yeah,
but
Lake
the town
Street,
park
yeah,
of that, the
Lake Street, yeah. I mean, I think that's an asset that I'm looking to better utilize, or we're looking to better utilize. Part of the Rescue Plan Act funds that we put in place was $250,000 for consulting and actual improvements, and we can get more if we need more for our parks and recreation assets, and that's definitely an opportunity for us to consider at Lake Street.
And there's no ball field at the new Beal.
There is a multi-use field in front of the school on to the right-hand side of the main entrance door, but there is not a diamond, correct, yes.
So I was a little surprised that that wasn't just an automatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, even just for kickball, not
Right.
just softball or baseball,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that they didn't have that for the gym classes. That surprised me. But there is space in town
Yep.
for, not just an additional field, but more fields.
Yep. And
And there's certainly a need for it because, I mean, it's so exciting to see so many youth playing sports all at once, and it's
Mhm.
not always the same sports. It's different sports in the same season. So it's nice that we have that option, but I do think we need to play catch-up with some of those fields. What do you think?
I think that there's a lot that's maybe underutilized, and I think that there's also looking at the contingent of the population that would use a ball field versus would use open space. So I agree, we need to find the balance.
With some of the discussion, everybody's worried about the flock of middle school students that walk down Maple Ave and do whatever they do as they go along. Part of that's just being the age that they're at. And part of it is, you know, people are saying, well, they need to be able to go behind Beal School, the old Beal School, to play. They don't go there now. They don't stop at the foundation property to play. They don't stay at the either middle school to play on those fields. They don't go to Dean Park and they do what they do in the middle of the town common. I'm not criticizing that because we were all junior high students with that type of a brain at that time, but I think it's almost like a mispursued
mm-hmm.
need that we want to have these kids do those things. That's not what they want to do.
Right.
You know, we could have more parks and recreation after-school activities for middle school children, which might not be a bad idea or something to look into, not just on Saturday, but maybe at 3 o'clock or whatever on the fields that already exist. Because at that time, the teams aren't practicing anyhow. So if that, but will that attract those kids to not flock down Maple Ave? I'm not so sure about that. I think they just want to hang around, and I'm not sure we need to build a youth center for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
It's expensive babysitting on the town's part to do that.
I mean,
And I'm not opposed to a youth center, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's the answer just because Beal has moved to another location.
I mean, I think we can, we certainly want to explore more opportunities for recreation activities, and we're, working through everything that we have to do internally in the town to be able to do that. I hope that, and I know we will, provide more opportunities for public engagement so we don't get to some of these public hearings and, it's, community center versus, it's really just like,
Right.
what are we asking, what are we looking for? And, I'm not a political, person, but this may be a very political statement. We can't compete with Dunkin' Donuts in that middle school brain, right? Like, unless Dunkin' is in the community center, like, those kids, like, good for them. That's what they want to do. It can't, that's a big hurdle to overcome.
And I've been in other towns, for example, Grafton, when those kids get out of school and they flock to Dunkin' Donuts and to the ice cream stand that's there just to do the same thing. They just want to socialize. They don't want necessarily an organized event. They just want to
We
socialize.
just had that
They're
for the
just
last 6
they're just
hours.
middle school kids. I do think that a lot of good questions came up, and I think they're reasonable. They're concerned about there being too many apartments, and is there room for negotiation around that?
Oh, there absolutely is room for negotiation, and that's, what we're pursuing with the board and with the developer is what did we hear and what can we change and have a viable project moving forward. I just want to say, like, I'm so grateful and happy about the demeanor of the public hearing. It was completely civil. We've seen a lot of disgusting things on TV and other locations, and I just really enjoyed, like, whether it was whether I thought like a community center should go on that site or not, but just hearing what residents wanted and what they were thinking and their thoughts, like, I really enjoyed it, so.
I
mean,
loved the woman who talked about just being able to sit on a porch and watch the ball game across the
Yep,
street.
yep.
Because I grew up near Ward School, and recess was a happy sound.
Mhm.
You know, it was a happy sound, and so she will miss that. That's a fact. I also think the concern about adequate parking and the way commercial vehicles can get in there to do their deliveries, I think that's a reasonable question. And looking at the plan, it looked like it was gonna be a stretch to be able to make some of those things happen. So the important thing is they have to go before the planning board. So the planning board controls a lot of those things, and the planning, I have confidence that the planning board will pay attention to the number of apartments, the number of bedrooms in apartments, and how that impacts the schools. Because there's been a lot of studying around that.
Well, it'll take us, it will take the developer, you know, upwards of $1 million to get to a plan that would, you know, really have all those things worked out. And until really we come to an agreement and say like, you know, green, let's go, and like both parties agree, no one's gonna invest that type of resources. So that's why we're at the public hearing phase. We want feedback. This is still the phase where, you know, you can move big chunks of things and it doesn't cost a lot of money because it's literally, you know, on paper. But once we get beyond this, it will get tighter and tighter and tighter, just like a building project or anything else, like, you know, any other project like it. It's, you know, once the real dollars start going in, you don't want to make
I
changes.
appreciated the comment by the person who said that the World War I memorial needs to have more of a prominence, because it looked like it was gonna get sucked right into those commercial buildings, the way it was on the plan. I thought that was a really good point too. And I think we have the expectation that that monument has to have prominence.
Absolutely.
So, I think the building didn't look bad. I think it'll look nicer with less apartments, but the design I thought was a with it design, or a, you know, appealing looking design. What did you think?
I agree aesthetically, it's very nice. And I agree with Kevin. I think that I was really happy that a lot of people engaged. I mean, we were not going into this with we've made up our minds and we're just doing a token, sure, we'll hear from you. I mean, this was a very important part of the process, was to make sure that we heard from the community in terms of what their preferences and opinions are. So I agree, you know, a lot of it is conceptual at this point, and, you know, the next step is to determine where Civico Greenlee will come in terms of, you know, the number of units they're willing to, you know, have, and what the retail space will be. And then, you know, to your point, as we go further in the planning process, to make sure that things like the memorial, the parking situation, access, et cetera, and also being mindful to those direct neighbors there. But, you know, what we did try to do with this process was try to take a step back and prepare before the hearing with this video that, you know, Kevin's office and Shrewsbury Media Connection did, to kind of say, this is how we got here. You know, this is why we're presenting a
I thought it was
proposal
well
for
done.
mixed use. You know, so that I feel is something that we want to try to continue to build on. I don't know how effective it was, so I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it. But we get that no one is going to go through 4 years and, you know, how many hours of meetings to really get caught up to how did we get here today. So we were trying to sort of concisely lay out, and I think that's the challenge, is that it wasn't just the Board of Selectmen or, you know, the town planning department. It was the Beal Reuse Committee, and it was town meeting. And, you know, this has been probably too long of a process, but it has been a very well thought out process. And so, you know, I think for those people that have been approaching like no apartments, it's like, well, in order to do this, there are going to be some apartments. And I know that that's something that a lot of people in the community struggle with. And I agree with Kevin. The community center, it's not an either or. It's not that we shouldn't do this because we should do a community center. This is not, a community center is not sort of in that zoning plan that we've laid out. So, I'm hopeful we will come to something that, shows compromise, that, really helps us to develop that town center into something that people are happy with and proud of and want to engage with. And I do think it becomes somewhat of an anchor for development for the rest of the town center. I've heard feedback from people that why would you put in more retail if we have retail shops that are, empty right now? And it's like, we're not necessarily going to be able to attract retailers to the other locations.
But that other location, though, they've already started to put in new windows. Obviously, the owner is making improvements there, too.
Mm-hmm.
The $150,000 to $250,000 anticipated tax dollars that would be more revenue to the town, we're always looking for that. So that's a plus. And then I asked myself, is it worth knocking down the building and leaving it as plain open space and not doing anything on it except having it be for active and passive recreation? And then I think about the $150,000 to $250,000 we're always trying to get revenue, and think it's a good business plan. So it's hard to come to grips with what's the best thing. I think it's important to know that the selectmen did a really good job taking that meeting, making it separate, making it so that the whole time was dedicated to hearing what people had to say and they weren't rushed. And I know I can rush a meeting, but I thought it was really good that they had that time, and as long as it took to hear what people had to say, I thought that was really good. And I think the evolution from those points that people made is what will be important to see, because it's been a thoughtful plan so far, and I anticipate it'll be a thoughtful plan going forward. And then, of course, we all were flabbergasted when we heard the value of the land was only $250,000. Was it 250, 225?
So that's the cash part of the transaction that's been negotiated. There's a lot of other pieces that we've said to the developer that you, in the private sector, you wouldn't say, I'm gonna sell you this piece of land and you're gonna build me a park and you're gonna add extra parking spaces for whoever the heck wants to park there, and you're gonna build me, that you can rent out, but you must, take so much of this land, you wanna develop it and turn it into retail, which is what I want. And so we're not the easiest, seller of a piece of property, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, like it or not, and, this is the position the Board of Selectmen's in, is it's currently a piece of town land. If this was a private transaction, you would sell it to someone for the highest dollar. So do I admit that someone else, private equivalent, would make a lot more money in cash? Of course. But, because we're trying to sell the property in the best interest of, the Shrewsbury residents, we are saying, build us a park. Tear down this building. We're not going to tear it down for you. Put in retail spaces, put in all these extra parking spaces. And then the developer goes, and I'm making numbers up, so, maybe I would have bought it for $1 million, but, that's $300,000 to build the park. Those parking spaces cost me $20,000 a pop when you consider stormwater. So that's another $400,000, and then just like, okay, we'll give you $250, right? So if we went back to them in theory and said, do whatever you want, they would say, okay, here's X amount more dollars than $250, but that's how you get to the $250. It's like, we're not like, do what you want. Like,
Yeah.
here, we'll sell this to you if and only you do these things for us. So
Now, those 20 spaces that would be public spaces, the restaurant, the coffee shop, and the microbrewery have their own parking spaces? Or were those
yes.
included?
So if we exclude those 20 to start with, right, there's enough parking based on, zoning calculations for all the units, 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit, and then X number of units per square feet of retail space, and then plus 20.
plus 20.
Yeah, so.
So that's good.
Yep, so the development itself would be self-sufficient, and then those really are bonus spaces, so it's not like.
And just think how much extra space you'd have if you could have a few less apartments, and you could expand your open space, or you could put in more parking, whatever. But I think that people had some good legitimate concerns, and it's important to respect how the neighborhood's affected, because I'm still not convinced that the neighborhood was considered as much as it should have been on the Lakeway project, or getting to that point of the Lakeway project. I don't think the residents were necessarily heard as much, or they didn't have the opportunity to speak out as much. And so it's nice to see that that's happening on this next project.
And yeah, and honestly, that's a part of the difference, right? So Lakeway wasn't a town-owned parcel that we sold, right? So that brings that dynamic, and
Right.
you know, people really have to scratch their heads. Do I want to work with a local government to buy a piece of their property
Right.
with 65 strings attached and 12 months of time, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's different because we have the public interest in mind throughout the course of it. And if I could just take literally 1 minute, so. The reason that residential and retail are kind of, a sliding scale on each is because that developer who's, they know, based upon the housing market, that they're gonna rent every apartment that they can build. If they build 65, 165, 265, they're gonna fill them. I mean, Lakeway Commons development has never been less than 98% occupied since it was able to be, fully open. That's literally one apartment out of 250. That's why a developer goes, the more residential I can fit in there. And when you make them put in retail space, they say, yeah, but if I lose a restaurant, it could take me 6 months to get a restaurant. Or if I use a boutique or clothing store, it could take me 8 months to refill that. So, without a tenant, no income versus guaranteed income in the residential. And that's where that scale really slides. So they don't want to build the retail, but we're saying you can't do the project if you don't.
And I would just comment, I think that from where I sit, I mean, you raise a point about, we hear that we want to maximize economic development, we want to keep our tax rate affordable, so we want to increase commercial, but people don't like all the commercial that's coming into the town. So it's always sort of that balance, but I think that, the primary reason for doing this and not doing just pure open space is not just because, or the primary reason is not the tax revenue. I think it really is part of this revitalization and how we want the town center to function and what we want it to be for a draw for the community. So while open space, like pure open space and that, doesn't accomplish really being a draw for people to come and engage with the community. So, and I think in some respects, a single use where you don't get any of the residential and you just have, one business that's there, again, that doesn't really accomplish the objectives of what this, town center study, showed us that the community would prefer. So.
Well, I respect the town center study, but I really respect the revenue, because I think we've lived through, the frustration of trying to pull in as much revenue as we can, because that helps the taxpayer. And as the taxes keep sneaking up, not that it shouldn't, but as that keeps happening, it's so nice to know that there's buffers where we look forward to that revenue. And if you just listed the additional revenue we've gotten in the last 5 years, for example, there's a good chunk of money that's come to the town, and we need to keep our focus on, yes, the town center and all the beautification, that's wonderful, but we have to focus on the revenue in order to make a lot of these other things happen. So I'm happy with that. So,
Well, if you're happy, we're happy.
no, well, there you go. But I'm confident that the selectmen and all the town boards that need to be focused on this project certainly will. And I think that the people were heard, and heard respectfully, as you pointed out, too. Do you have anything else to say about Beal?
No.
Can I just touch, I just don't want to run short of time on the fluoride is not in our water.
Right,
because
of global supply issues.
can you believe
yeah,
it?
there's
Even the fluoride.
Yeah,
I
there's,
know, right?
there's no fluoride in the Commonwealth or really on the East Coast. We're part of an East Coast consortium, to bring in sodium fluoride for the water supply, and there's literally none to be had.
Mhm.
So we provided notice throughout to the Board of Health and through the Board of Health, and so individuals, if they choose, can make medical decisions, whether they want to supplement for their children or whatever.
Which is really important for people to hear again and again, that there's no fluoride in the water right now, and they do need to talk to their pediatricians about the fluoride supplement for the dental health of their infants, not just when they have teeth, but their infants and young children. That needs to be something that they really push for immediately, and so that needs to be publicized everywhere.
Mhm.
And it may be, I just don't have
Mhm.
Facebook and the rest of it, so I don't know where you have the ads. But anyways, as far as the fluoride goes, what else did you have for questions?
I don't have many other questions, Donna.
Oh
I'll
my,
defer to
then let me
yours.
go down
Okay.
the left here. Okay, I touched upon the school children and housing developments, and you had a report on that.
Right.
And what was the biggest piece of information in that report?
Well, I mean, I think it is, that we continue to be really good at that reporting, right? Our reports are really accurate, and that the apartment communities still continue to underperform as school-age children producers. We have seen a decline in enrollment in the Shrewsbury Public Schools, just like most other public school system has, COVID effect, pandemic effect, whatever you want to call it. So that gives us, a tiny breather. It doesn't help our issue at the high school or anything like that, but it's a consistent report that we do every year. We've been very accurate with. We use it to plan, but I think the biggest takeaway continues to be that, places like Lakeway Commons, and it'll be determined if Edgemere redevelopment, but they don't seem to produce a lot of school-age children.
What do you see as, in the future, the lineup of what the needs will be for public buildings once the police station's done?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
Yeah, wow.
That beautiful police station. You have to, I mean, as a town manager and as a superintendent of schools, you always have to be looking
Yeah,
to the
we are.
future, even if you're not telling us this is what we're doing
Yeah.
now.
So, Donna, you may remember that, when we built the high school, we also did this 20-year plan through Lamoureux Pagano Associates called a school space needs study. So we're actually, the Beal project from the beginning, even in the schematic design phase when we went to town meeting, this was part of the funding for that. So we have commissioned Lamoureux Pagano and Associates to move forward with a space needs study for the schools. We think we have a really good handle on that, right? Like, we know the age of all of our schools. We know that the now most overcrowded aspect of our school system is the high school. So we are planning for it. And, what I will say is, if you hear within the next, I don't want to set a time frame, but I'll give myself a big window, 24 months, about a next project, don't forget we started Beal in 2015 and opened it in the fall of 2021.
Right.
So if you want to open something, in the fall of, 2027 or 2028, we need to start talking to the MSBA this spring, or, that soon.
It took
Just
10
takes forever.
years to
Yeah.
get to the high school.
Yep.
So it does take time, and that's why, so you're thinking the next project would probably be a reflection of what the school study shows? You think it'll be a school?
Well,
You
I
don't
mean,
think it'll be,
I will put a plug in for, the town hall. It was part of the, municipal campus study. It is now, 97 was the addition on it. It's a 1967 building. And as we look to provide more services and grow with the town, we've cannibalized public meeting spaces. The old selectmen's room is now 2 offices. We're running out of space there. The other big thing on the municipal side, outside of a community center, which is kind of like a new thing that needs discussed separately, is our DPW facilities, right? If we're gonna, have that fleet, maintain the fleet, water and sewer operations and highway operations on South Street, those buildings are aging as well. So, that's what's in my mind, but, that's,
So there are things. I
Yeah,
mean, the
there are.
reality
There always
is,
will be.
there always
Yeah.
will be some sort of a project that's next, or next in line. And it's just a matter of which one, when. So I don't believe it's a secret. I think it's
Yeah.
something that, it's a reality of moving forward.
And I think part of that planning now in the future with our the details and forecasting that we've done in the operating plan and that whole override cycle, we'll now have to fit exclusions into there appropriately, right? We don't want to do an exclusion and an override in the same year and spike the tax rate. We'll have to fit it in. And the good news is that, over the coming 3 to 5 years, actually, no, 4 years specifically, from looking at the forecast, we lose $1 million in total debt service requirements, right? So that's the positive impact on the tax rate, which means it goes down, so.
The tree cutting on Route 9, was that a state project or a town project?
Not a town project.
Not a, do you know what it cost by any
I
chance?
do not.
I was curious with my bright ideas, why they don't cut back, not just cut back the trees, but cut back the trees so that they don't have to keep trimming them every so many years. They probably in the long run save money. I was just curious about that. And Market Basket property, Edgemere,
Yeah, all moving very well.
grocery stores still
Yep.
in the future?
It's in the future, and the apartments, there's a certificate of occupancy that was issued for the clubhouse, which will be their rental facility where their offices will be. And it's our understanding that leasing will begin on the first buildings in January and continue, throughout the, calendar year. So.
In Centec North, which is the Allen property?
Yeah, doing a lot of site work up there, and we'll be moving into the
lot of
building-
site work.
Yeah, building construction phase. Those are, more new growth, more positive benefit of a non-taxable property onto the tax rate.
And then, the exciting news, every year comes one free bag.
One free bag.
One
that's
free
right.
bag
Yeah.
between Christmas and New Year's, basically. And I think that's good. People look forward to that. It sounds almost silly, but it's a nice thing to
It's
do.
the little things.
It is. It's sometimes the little things that make a big difference. And we also had the tree lighting. I think the common looks so nice at night. It makes me want to just go for a ride just so I can look at it after dark. Your snow plows are ready?
Yeah, ready, but we're still looking for private contractors. So if anyone's interested, please contact the Department of Public Works.
And your salt shed's full?
Full.
Very good. And the hour is up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.